of y'all want to hang out, we got next speaker is going to be Jasper. He's also from Raleigh.
Yay, Jasper!
I'm an addict. My name is Jasper.
Jasper.
Not sure that I'm going to stay behind this mic because I'm real antsy. I need to share that I'm real grateful, right? And I'm full spiritually. You know, I'm going to try my best not to get emotional and not to cry. This is a men's rap, and y'all know y'all tough guys don't cry, right? That's misinformed information. First, I want to thank the convention committee. You know, I love conventions. I love Narcotics Anonymous. I love conventions. I'm the convention chair of my area, Raleigh, North Carolina. Coming up here today, you know, I need to say that this moment right here, right, the spiritual awakening that you guys are experiencing, I'll share my story, and hopefully you can understand. I don't apologize for my story. I don't. I won't say if my story offends you, call your sponsor, because I hope you do anyway. But what I will share, my experience, right, when something was not comfortable with me. Hell, I wasn't comfortable with my own story until I worked the fourth and fifth step. So the hope is, if my story offends you, there is something in place to help you get better with that. That's the fourth and fifth step. That's what it did for me. You know, I was listening to Brian talk about he'd been here before, and so was I. When Leah, the programming chair, called me, and she got my number from a tape that I'd done, a workshop I'd done in New Jersey, and asked me about doing this workshop, my first question was, do you know who you're talking to? This is Jasper L. from Raleigh, North Carolina. She said, yeah, I know. And when she said Knoxville, Tennessee, it took me back because see, I'd been here before myself for the World's Fair, right? And what I've learned in this process has always been that first of something that starts the process of something else. And the topic here is the mask must go, right? And it was at that convention, at that World's Fair here in Knoxville, Tennessee, that a mask came on for me. It was the first of a lot of stuff. And we're not even talking about the drugs. It was 15 years after that first experience that I picked up my first drug. I'm talking about something that allowed me to put the mask on based on misinformed information, right? Because I participated in some activities, sexual activities, with another guy, my classmate, that I enjoyed at this facility, you know, in 82, 85, whatever, at the World's Fair, right? Had a girlfriend at the time, had several girlfriends actually, and then this happened, right? This happened, and I enjoyed it, right? So I had to put the mask on because I had all this misinformed information that I'm not a man if I did this and all this stuff. So for many years, I put on the mask. Many years, right? Identity crises and not knowing of this. See, I come from a religious background. My father's a pastor, and so I had all this going on over here, and I'm from the South, so I had all this going on over here, and I was just confused, right? I was confused. So I went on through high school and through college acting out on that mask. And the drugs had yet to come. Didn't start using until I was 30 years old. What happened for me? My behavior before I used is what I understand today is a symptom of the disease of addiction, right? I'd done so much before I used that the drugs was to come. I understand that. I understand I suffer from a disease, the disease of addiction. I had a girlfriend who later became my fiance. Had another girlfriend, a chick on the side, right? This is a men's rap, so I'm going to talk about all of this, right? Then I had this dude over here that was telling me that I was sexy. You know, he was, you know, all of that. So I had all this stuff going on. The mask was on. Not liking not so much the activities that I was participating in, but not liking the fact that I could not say this is what I was doing. So I was wearing a mask. This topic is the mask must go. Years later, I came into the program with Narcotics Anonymous, right? And then I heard people say, once again, I'm not promoting anything. I'm just sharing my experience and what the steps have done for me. We're talking about a spiritual awakening. How I've been able to get some freedom and stay clean a day at a time. You know, freedom from the bondage of self, right? came into rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, and I heard cliches like, your seekers keep you sick. You know, seekers keep you sick. And I said, whew, can't tell that one. Can't tell that one. But I was too afraid to return to what I was using. I'm fast forwarding because I want to get to Narcotics Anonymous, but I need to give you all that information, you know, so why I feel that coming back to Knoxville, Tennessee was such an impact on my life. And I believe, man, I really, really believe that everything that has happened for my entire life has prepared me for this very moment, right? I understand that newcomer, you're the most important person in any meeting, right? I understand that, but this shit is for me, for real, for real. This is for me, right? I get the feel that everything in my life is starting to all make sense to me. Not to anyone else, but to me. Those are symptoms of the spiritual awakening. It's the peace of mind, like, okay, God, I get it now. I'm no longer the victim. You know, I get it now. All of that stuff, right, is preparing me to come back to Knoxville, Tennessee, 20-something years later, after telling myself that I'm not a man and having done the work to say that I am a man where I stand. It all makes sense to me, right? Only Narcotics Anonymous has given me the freedom to be able to stand in a room full of men that are men's rap in Narcotics Anonymous and say, this is who I am, without the mask. That's huge for an addict like me, for a person like me, for a man like me, for a human like me. That's huge. I'm grateful. Riding up here, and I may be bouncing around. I've had several cups of coffee all morning. Riding up here, I was coming up with me and my sponsee. Well, he was slept the whole way. But it's something spiritual about riding up the mountain, right? Riding up the mountain, listening to some Sade and watching the fog. Listen, I at that moment, man, I started appreciating the valley, right? I started appreciating the valley because I understand at the foot of every mountain is the valley. And coming around, I was coming up 40, traveling west, and there was some fog, right? And what came to mind was several things, like sponsorship, you know, because I have my navigator system giving me directions, telling me how to get here, right? And one thing I can say about a navigation system is just like a sponsor. Once it points direction, it's not going to make any noise until you get off track. It didn't say rerouting, right? So my navigator was right here, and I know I was going in the right direction. It wasn't making any noise. My sponsor was over there asleep, snoring. So I knew I was coming the right direction. I saw this fog, and all I could see was right what was in front of me. But because my system was quiet, I knew I was heading in the right direction. Kind of like sponsorship. My sponsor can guide me and tell me which way to go. And he'll sit back and allow me my own process until I get diverted. Then he gets me back on course. Anyway, and as I was coming up the hill, what came to mind was all I have to do through any adversity is keep moving forward, right? Keep moving forward. I got the direction, right? The arrow saying go forward is not beeping, telling me to rerouting. Then as I come up the mountain, I hit the corner, and right around then it was like sunrise, right? And I'm coming up the mountain, and then the sun is right there. So what came to me right then was like, wow, if I just keep moving forward through any adversity, right? And if I can just trust the process, my sponsor, the navigator, when I get through it, there's always light. Don't know why I said that, but that's just what I was feeling coming up here. We're talking about mask. Now, that was the mask that I put on before the drug. Now, the drug showed up in my life way after college. Now I had to become a different person because it's very difficult trying to cop and articulate. Can't do it. Can't show up on the block speaking proper English trying to get a bag. So now I had to dummy up, so to speak. So I put this mask on that I already had this great big mask that had been smothering me all of my life. You know, then I had to put another mask on top of it to be hip and cool. I'm a country boy. Father's a pastor. Grew up in a small town in South Carolina. Ain't nothing hip and cool about that, right? But I had to become someone else in order to think that I was blending in. How many know that I wasn't blending in? So I wore that mask, hip and cool, right? as that progressed and I hit rock bottom, we all know how that goes. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about using because we all know how to use. Came into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, right? 30 days clean, wanted 30 years. 5 months clean, wanted 5 years, right? Because see, I'm a good student. I've always been a good student. So I can read some information and I can interpret it pretty well. But I heard my brother share earlier, about not having the experience. And it showed in how I shared, right? I'm grateful for the predecessors. I'm grateful for the experienced members of Narcotics Anonymous, right? Who just not brutally got with me after the meeting. Got with me after the meeting and said stuff like, you know what? That was good information. Let's talk about some application. It was real easy for me to come in the room with Narcotics Anonymous and talk about what the literature said. But that's not my experience. That's the literature. My experience came when I was able to apply the spiritual principles in that stuff, and then I can share my experience. But the fifth step was, I sat down with my sponsor after writing this stuff, and he gave me his experience and some stuff, and some of the things that he didn't have experience with. Then we went on, and he told me some things he saw in some characteristics, talking about defects, right? And so when I was able to talk about the defect, that I found in my fifth step and share that honestly, then I can say I have some experience with the fifth step. When a defect showed up like my insecurity, I came in with a whole lot of prejudice, a whole lot, right? Not racist, but just prejudice. And I realized through doing the step work that was a symptom of the insecurity. I didn't feel good about myself because of how I was living. You know what I'm saying? Because of how I was thinking. So anybody who didn't think, live, or talk, walk, or anything like me, I didn't like you. Self-centered is the core of the disease. I understand that today. I love the fact that the steps allowed me to the steps, my experience, has introduced me to me. Introduced me to me and to God. To me and to God, me and God, back and forward. The 6 steps tells me that I will continue to make mistakes. That's reintroducing me to me. Every time I act out on a defect of character, it reminds me of who I really am. Until I get sick and tired and really, really surrender and say, God, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I've tried. But I continue to act out on those things that I don't want to do. That's because I'm trying to stop on my own. I surrender, I'm real grateful, man, that I can come here today in a men's rap. Who would have ever thought that I would be in Knoxville, Tennessee, doing a men's rap after 20-something years of my father and other members in society telling me that I'm not a man? Who would have thought? Me telling myself that I'm not a man because of. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that there were some steps in place that said, what a real man is? I live by myself. I'm first responsible for my own recovery. That's the first thing, right? I live by myself. I pay my own bills. I care about other people. I'm no longer that little boy who's expecting everybody in the world to take care of me. I'm a man. I'm a man where I stand. The hardest thing for me to do since being a member of Narcotics Anonymous was keep that mask off. Bringing it currently, I'm single, and I've been single since I've been clean. I've been in a few, I won't say relationships, but a few situations. But I've never been in a 2-party relationship. Since I've been clean. I had one young lady that was dating me, but I wasn't dating her. I had one young man that I was dating, but he wasn't dating me. So I never really had a 2-party relationship, so I don't have a whole lot of experience with that, right? And the me wanting companionship, it was hard, and it can still be hard if I don't do the daily maintenance to keep the mask off, because it's a lot easier for me to date women than to date men. And I'm just telling my story, not because I'm just all of that. It's just, it is what it is, But I know today that I don't intentionally want to harm anyone. So what do? I sit still. I sit still, and I allow the God of my understanding, mine, right? And it's that God that's allowed me to freely share in front of you guys without fear of being judged, without fear of someone else's third step. You know what I'm saying? To stand here and say, I'm all right with who I am today. I'm a man where I stand. You know what I'm saying? There is no mask today. There is no mask. It's up to me whether I keep the mask off. Some days, it's a lot easier than others. I got to be honest. Some days, it's a whole lot easier than others, man. I'm real grateful, right, for sponsorship. I sponsor men that have allowed me to see me in every destination that I could be. I have brothers that I sponsor. I've never been to prison, right? I've had brothers that have done time for double murders, and I've got sponsees that are college graduates. I've had, a variety of men, and I've sponsored women in this process as well. And what I've gained from the sponsorship relationships were bits and pieces of me, my reality and my fantasy, because I've always wanted to be a bang shoot 'em up person. They just had the nerve to do it, But I live vicariously through some of their experiences, And I'm man enough to say when they come to me, because I have a few guys that I sponsor that are married. I'm man enough to say I've never been married. I don't have any children. I don't have the experience. However, I make enough meetings and I listen when I go that I pretty much have an idea of who in our area have experience with what, so I can direct them. My sponsor has a totally different lifestyle than I do, and I appreciate that. That made the fifth step more humbling for me. It was really easy for me to find someone, another gay man like myself, and say, listen, this is some of the stuff that I've done. Real easy. But it was difficult. It was humbling for me to sit with someone who I knew never participated in those things and still say that and gain the freedom. That's just my stuff. The men that I sponsor, they all have different lifestyles. And that's okay too. That has helped me stay in this process. That has helped me be okay with the man that I am today. Because one of my biggest fears when I first got clean and came into this fellowship was relationships with men. What I do for a living, I'm a hairstylist, I'm a cosmetologist, so I've always been around women. So it's easy for me to interact and bond and that stuff with women, but it was the brothers that I just didn't know what you and I were going to talk about. We weren't going to talk about women. I don't do sports, so what we going to talk about? So I stayed away out of fear. And then I didn't want you to see beneath that mask, right? So I stayed away from you. But coming into Narcotics Anonymous, I realized that we do have a common bond, and that's recovery. And so I've gained relationships, meaningful relationships with the brothers in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. Meaningful relationships, and we talk about just life stuff. And we can put the principle before the personality. I had a sponsor tell me once, this is, had a guy, he 60 days clean at the time, and he asked me to sponsor him. And I believe in giving everybody a choice. So when he asked me to sponsor him, what I said to him was, you know my story. Because I just didn't want to assume that he knew my lifestyle when he asked me. And I didn't want, maybe that could have been an area he hadn't dealt with yet and had some issues with it, and I didn't want to cause him no harm later finding out. So I said to him, you do know my lifestyle. He said, that's the personality, right? The principle. I'm like, okay, that was kind of cool. But what it did for me was it allowed me to know that I'm not that important. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the showstopper, Brian. Not all the time. But my self-centeredness, right, will allow me to think that when I walk in the room and I share that everybody is either judging me or loving me. And a lot of times, I may not even be noticed. And that's okay too. That is okay. Humility. What I understand about humility is if I'm saying that I'm practicing humility, I'm being arrogant. Because it's a spiritual principle, I can't do it on my own. What I've learned is that through working the steps, right, the fourth step particularly, I was able to get honest with who I am. And that is humility. Not being up here or down here, just being right size. Just staying right size, somewhere in the middle, and accepting the fact that there's some flaws, sure, but then there's some good things about me also. Some of those things I forgot about. Like I said, being articulate, that didn't happen on the block. Some of those qualities I forgot about through using. I'm just real grateful for this process, man. Now, what helps me stay in a state of humility is service. I'm huge and heavily involved in service. A symptom of one of my character defects is low self-esteem, right? And what I was told when I first got clean, and a lot of this, it plays into the mask and stuff, because with the low self-esteem, I'll put on a mask on and come across as being arrogant, right? But what was not suggested to me early on was, if I do esteemable stuff, then it would help with my self-esteem. And I started doing esteemable stuff by getting involved with service. First with my home group. My home group, we don't serve coffee, so didn't have to make coffee. But I get there early, help set up the chairs and greet newcomers and that type of stuff, right? And then I got involved when I first got clean. Well, while I was using an active addiction, I was a partier. Loved to be in the clubs. Lived in Atlanta for a while, so I was always partying. And I realized that part of my life had to end if I wanted to stay clean. So what I did was I said, there got to be something in the fellowship that I can do. I like planning. I do fashion shows. I like talent shows. I like that kind of stuff. I'm a hairstylist, makeup artist, so I like that kind of stuff. So someone suggested the convention committee. There's planning, there's fundraisers, there's event planning, all that involved. So I got involved with the convention committee. Started on fundraising, and now I'm the chairperson. That has been an experience for me that's unbelievable, because what it allowed me to do was get involved with the traditions. My sponsor said, now that you're in service on the area level, we really need to get you involved with the tradition. Because if not, somebody going to jail. I don't know whether you guys have ever been to an area level service commitment meeting, but thank God for the traditions, Our convention is coming up also. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited about coming to this convention, because I get an opportunity to broaden my base and meet a few addicts. And like I said, I understand that, the newcomer is the most important person at any meeting, right? But this one is for me. This one is for me, because I'm feeling this thing coming full circle in my life, And I don't know whether anybody can identify with the whole double lifestyle mask on the DL kind of story. That's not why I'm here. I'm not here to try to convince you of anything. What I'm simply saying, after doing the work, and the work I'm talking about is the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous, my life is finally making sense. By coming back to Knoxville, Tennessee, on this very park where the World's Fair was, where my first was, not the first drug, but my first that started the reaction of the mask coming on, by coming back to this place and doing a men's rap. That is spiritual for me. That's why I say this one is for me. I'm at a place in my life, and have been. I was sharing this in my area, that it wasn't a complacency. It wasn't, didn't have the desire to use, thank God. Didn't want to leave the fellowship, but I didn't want to go home. Restless. Found myself riding around. Not on the block, but just riding around. As high as gas is, riding around. It's insanity. But what I had to get in touch with was there was something spiritually bubbling. There was something, That's why I was at that place driving up here, able to appreciate the valley, because at that time I was in a valley and didn't even realize it, right? But coming up here, now I see the light. When I realized that, okay, the God of my understanding was bubbling something up in my spirit, birthing something, we're talking about a spiritual awakening was happening, and I didn't know it. Thank God that I had invested in my recovery enough to know that using was not a solution. It is always an option, but it's not a solution. Thank God. Thank God I bought into the fact that for me to use this to die. I remember the last night I used. I remember. I remember hearing something saying, you do one more, you're going to die. Don't know what that something was. I don't know whether it was me telling that to myself, the drug dealer, or his pit bull that was sitting in there. I don't know who said it. But I know I heard something. And I need to believe that. And that's what, listen, when I first got clean, I remember my parents came up to visit me, and I was so proud that I had some furniture. I got a new TV and a sofa, and I was so proud because I ended up in a homeless shelter, right? And so when I came in, I brought my mom in my place, and I was like, look, Mom, I got a sofa and stuff, and she wasn't impressed, I was 40 years old when I got clean. And so she's like, okay, you supposed to have a TV and a sofa. And I was like, really? Really? So, and I say that to say losing stuff is not something that's going to keep me clean. The fear of losing stuff. My mom reminded me, if you had all the furniture that you gained and lost, you'd have a furniture store. So if I just hold on to the fact that I'll lose the car, lose the place, lose my clothes, if I use, that won't keep me clean. Because I've lost it and gained it before, while I was still using. I've had those little moments that the religion talks about when I can pull it together, and regain some stuff only to give it away again. I've had those. But what I hold on to, that if I do one more, I can die. Yesterday was my birthday. This is why it was spiritual. I'm the addict who didn't think that he would live to see 21. Didn't think that, I'm 45 years old, me, alive, clean, and healthy. Knoxville, Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? All of this stuff, that bubbling that I felt weeks ago, gave birth to a spiritual awakening as I was coming up the mountain on, this sounds so cliche, it's coming up the mountain, driving up 40, It all made sense. There's no coincidence that my sponsee was sleeping, snoring in the car. He needed to be still so that I can get with the God of my understanding. That needed to happen. Because the initial plan was because I worked all day yesterday, he was going to be the first driver. For some reason, I ended up driving. And it was that very moment coming up 40 that I really, really got in touch with God. And I came and I saw that gold ball. And I couldn't remember anything else about any of this. But I remembered that, where is it? Somewhere. That I remembered that gold ball, right?
Yes, sir.
And I remembered, man. And I was standing there talking to my sponsor, and I was just looking around. And I remember, our literature talks about the first of everything starts with the first one, I'm grateful. And I was laughing, Brian, when you said you were here, too. Y'all, it wasn't Brian. He don't remember anyway, because he was high, could have been, but I don't But anyway, don't shoot me.
I remember.
It wasn't you. But anyway, just like in the steps, the first step is the beginning of the whole process. There's an experienced member in my area that I always say, you stay away from the first one. It's that first one, not the third one that gets me high. It's the first one. Something like that eluded me for so long. I remember when I first got clean, I was one of those addicts, one of those smart addicts, who, first of all, I came in not knowing anything about the disease of addiction, not knowing anything about Narcotics Anonymous. It was the best well-kept secret. I knew no one who used and came to any 12-step program and was no longer using. All the people that used to use that were no longer using were in church. And I don't knock religion at all. I've tried it. It just didn't work for me. Like I said, I grew up in church. My father's a pastor. Tried psychiatry. That didn't work. Right? I understand today that all of that stuff together I needed. But I was getting bits and pieces at different times in my life, and just wasn't my time. God, the God of my understanding, right? And 11-step stuff. It is pretty much the same God. I came into Narcotics Anonymous. I've always wanted to do that, like I could sing. I always wanted to do that. Came in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous saying stuff like, the God of my grandparents. And, because I heard other people say that, right? I heard other people say that. But what I understand, that it was it was their God. Because I wasn't praying. I wasn't one of those addicts that were using and praying. I wasn't. They were. Right? So how dare I say that, denounce the God of anybody's understanding? Because somebody was praying for me. I wasn't. And I came to the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. Open-mindedness has taught me that not only do I have to be okay with what I believe, I have to be okay with what you believe. And allow everyone to be and to believe what they are and what they believe. First tradition talks about it's our unity and it's our strength. I need all of you guys, I also understand that this is the reality. I also understand with the lifestyle that I choose to live that everybody's not all right with it. The literature doesn't say that you have to be. It says, no, I can be here regardless of. But it doesn't say anyone has to be all right with it. I accept that. I have to be all right with it. That's all that matters. But I do believe, and I need to believe, right, that if I was dying and in trouble, that whether you like me, my lifestyle, anything about me, you'd be there to help me. I would be there for you. If I don't like you, I'm not one of the ones to tell you that I like everybody, because I don't. I love everybody. That's the brotherly love, right? But I'll still be there to help you. I won't fool with you the next day once I get you right. But I'm going to get you right to the best of my ability. That's brotherly love. I must love you. I'll lie if I say if I like everybody, and it'd be the fantasy to think that everybody likes me. Sometimes personalities clashes. That's okay. I'm all right with that today. No longer do I have to people please, put the mask on and smile and laughing at corny jokes that aren't funny to me. I'm going to say this, and I don't know how much time I got, but I'm going to say this because this is a big issue in the rules of Narcotics Anonymous, and I don't know whether it's an issue in Knoxville, Tennessee, but it's an issue. And that's prescription meds, right? Now, I may get some lashes for this, but it is, right? And this is a men's rap, so I need to talk about this, right? A mask. If I do not suffer from erectile dysfunction, and I'm using a little something to help me along, y'all know, Viagra, Cialis, right? Not only am I using, I'm wearing a mask. I'm just saying. I understand because of medical reasons, sometimes that stuff, thank God that ain't my issue, but I understand sometimes that stuff may, it may be necessary, right? But just to add a little something extra, that's a mask. We ain't going to get into whether it's using or not because Viagra is a narcotic. It has narcotics in it. Only you can count your clean time. That's what someone said to me, right? But what I need to say is, if it's not prescribed, but not just any doctor, but your doctor, you might want to take a look at it. That is an issue in our area. That is an issue, Thank God that experienced members had one brother share with me, you know what? What can help with that issue is start off by liking the person. That might help. Start off by being attracted to that person. That might help. You won't need a little something extra. That's a novel thought. I'm just saying, we're talking about, this is a men's rap, right? And we're talking about wearing masks. I go on and on and on and talk about the list of masks that I can still wear. I'll be the first to say that, at some given time, at any given time, I could, based on where I am spiritually, but I'll tell you one mask I won't wear is the one that I created in Knoxville, Tennessee in the 80s. That one I won't wear. That caused me a lot of problems. It really did. And I've gotten so much freedom from taking that mask off after coming to the Roots of Narcotics Anonymous. I refuse to put that one back on. But there are times when I may wear a little mask. Like you see, I got my pants sagging today, 45 years old. What in the world? To me, that's just like, okay, I'm borderline in denial, you know. But my rationality is I'm getting a little stomach. So if I sag the pants a little bit, you can't really tell. If I drop the waistline, then just pull them on up and just let it be. Brian, that's why I love you, man. You know, I ain't trying to make shine no light on that, but you know what I mean. You know, being okay with who I am. And if I'm not getting a solution, I'm too lazy to go to the gym. Bottom line. You know, I want to eat cheeseburgers at 12 o'clock and go to bed at 12:30. Like I'm still 21. Like Mama Tabby lives can burn. That's just me being in denial. You know, and the pain gets greater if I do something different. Thank God. Thank God. And it's only by the grace of God that I'm in really good health. Because I've done a lot of damage to my body. Thank God, man, with all the activity that I participated in before the drug, that I stand before you today HIV negative. That's a miracle within itself. And clean. 45. No diabetes, don't take medication for anything. Not Viagra or Sierra or nothing. You know, I'm grateful. I'm really, really grateful. I'm grateful that you guys, when I say you guys, I don't mean you guys in this room in particular. I mean the men of Narcotics Anonymous has helped me stay clean. By not. I have yet to get someone after knowing who I am not to want to hug me. It doesn't pass like that. So, I want you to know. I've not experienced that, but there are other gay men in this fellowship that has experienced that. And what I share with them, right, you have to look at why. You know, I'm one of those ones who, and this is through the help of a sponsor and other experienced members, I always like to keep the focus on me. If someone is not hugging me, then I need to get to the exact nature of why. You know, I understand today is perception, you know, but it's not been my experience because I respect others and others respect me. If I'm being disrespectful and being pushy or trying to promote, then what do I expect? I'm not an advocate for anything other than 12 steps from Narcotics Anonymous. And even with that, I can only share my experience. Only thing I can say, I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad that the God of my understanding has brought everything full circle for this addict. I'm glad. I'm just real, real glad that on this very moment, my life finally makes sense. I don't feel like I'm a mistake. I don't feel like I'm a freak of nature. I don't feel like I got to put a mask on just for you to like me or for you to be cool. I don't have to do that, you know. I'm grateful for Knoxville, Tennessee, for the World's Fair then, and for this convention now. Because the gap in between, a lot of stuff happened, right? But it has made me the man that I am today. And it's only through the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous that I can freely say that I'm a man where I stand. I'm Jasper L. from Washington.
All right, that concludes our men's rap. If we could circle up, please.